and the question was, what is it? Patient came in with some random abdominal pain and was found to have like entire liver, just very heterogeneous, and then they did MR. And without scrolling, you can appreciate the entire liver is kind of filled with these strange masses. They're not very well defined, kind of T2 hyperintense. And then they have very funny kind of enhancement where, like I looked at it and I said, well, it kind of sort of looks somewhat hemangiomatous, but not quite, right? So they have like, sort of have areas which enhance early on and expand, and they do follow the, you know, the vascular pool, but they're very poorly defined, and they just, if the hemangiomas, I said that they're weird hemangiomas, they really do need to be biopsied. So I'm sorry I can't scroll through it, but the entire liver is covered with it. So they ended up biopsying it, and it ended up being a, wait for it, sorry, take this away. There. It's called a, so preliminary path came back as hepatic small vessel neoplasm of uncertain malignant potential, which is a very rare kind of neoplasm, which is distinct from hemangiomas. They have some features of hemangiomas, but pathologically they are characterized by the fact they're very infiltrative, which is exactly what we see on imaging, very poorly defined. And what separates this neoplasm from angiosarcoma is presence or absence of p53 mutation. So the interesting part of this case was that the preliminary was this weird neoplasm, but then they ran the p53 mutation, and these actually came back as low-grade angiosarcomas. So the entire liver is covered with these. Nobody really don't know what to do with this patient. But
Victoria, is this on the like epithelioid hemangioendothelioma spectrum?
No, it seems like so. I only learned about it like a couple of days ago. It seems like it's its own distinct entity, which is this is kind of the pathology paper that describes it. It seems that it has some features of hemangiomas, but they define morphologically as infiltrative vasoformative neoplasm. So they have some features of cavernous hemangiomas. They're closer to angiosarcomas than hemangiomas, but they're lacking. The distinctive feature from angiosarcomas is lack of cellular atypia, and then this lack of p53 deletion or mutation. So they're very, very rare.
This reminds me of a case that was actually a case of my wife, who's a pediatric oncologist. She had a kid who ruptured his spleen in a biking accident. The spleen had angiomatous neoplasm in it. Then they scanned him with CT and MRI. He had numerous angiomatous lesions of the liver. The pathology was confusing. They sent it out to a couple of places. It came back with a pathology report that basically said, and I think this is before the era of maybe higher markers, we don't see any way not calling this an angiosarcoma. My wife treated with anti-angiogenesis drugs. The kid's alive today. It's probably been about 8 or 9 years now that the kid's alive, and is now like a case report of surviving angiosarcoma, which I always was telling her when we were doing the follow-ups on the imaging that I thought it was more of a lower grade spectrum thing, that it probably wasn't a high grade malignancy, that it was like an angiomatosis type case because it was a youth. But it reminds me of this anyway, something similar. It just means that, you know, there's common cases that we see that are run of the mill, and then there's all kinds of weird spectrum disorders of neoplasms that are less common that you'll encounter like this from time to time that take you by surprise.
All right, so I'm going to relinquish the